Welcome to episode 65 of the State of the Market for Law Firm Sales in 11 Minutes. My name is Jeremy Pook, and I lead Senior Attorney Match. Today's in 11 minutes will focus on the age of the startup law firm. That is, that the age of the startup law firm has arrived to the legal industry. We'll also have a bonus segment today. Our bonus segment is going to focus on brand value in law firms, and particularly with regard to personal injury law firms. We'll welcome Nicole Bergen. Nicole leads Elevate Marketing Research, and Nicole will address how personal injury law firms can develop and measure their brand value, plus how brand value adds more dollar signs when selling a personal injury law firm. So let's jump right into today's episode. The startup law firm has arrived to the legal industry. So let's put characteristics, a definition around what is a startup law firm. And what we're seeing in the marketplace is really 6 steps involved with a startup law firm. And the reason we call them steps as compared to another type of definition for a startup law firm is the goal of a startup law firm is a sale eventually. And many lawyers and law firms, as they've developed their law firms over the years, have not really thought from the outset that we're developing a business and developing it for an exit or sale value. So here are those 6 steps that we see. First is introduce a product. And what is that product in the legal industry? It's a practice area or practice areas. Then it's developing a strategy. How are we going to bring this product to market that is utilizing modern day technologies? We're using a CRM, we're using AI, we're using research software. We're thinking from the get-go about how to be profitable. And then, of course, as a law firm, we need to determine how do we originate clients. No matter how sophisticated a law firm is, all law firms need the energy source of clients. Then how do we build a team, right? We're building a team filled with lawyers as well as non-lawyers to generate that product. And as we're generating that product for those clients, now we're thinking about, and we're already at step 5, is how do we grow sales and make this business, this law firm, profitable. And as the sales increase and the profitability increases, startup law firm owners can then be thinking about how do we achieve an exit here? How do we sell our startup law firm? As we mentioned, the most important part of any law firm is clients. And when it comes to startup law firms, what we see is there's really 6 what we call windmills in terms of how do we generate business? How do we generate the energy source for our startup law firm? There's 6 windmills, 6 sources for how to originate and generate clients for startup law firms. First, in today's day and age, is Google, right? Where are clients going to be searching for lawyers and law firms to hire is going to be Google. So there is that proverbial Google tax that needs to be paid. Secondly, is we cannot underestimate the introduction of AI. Okay, consumers today, they are going to their AI thought leaders, they are going to ChatGPT and other AI resources and asking AI, similar to how they ask Google for the best fill in the blank lawyer or law firm to meet my particular needs for what I personally need, my business needs, my family needs, and whatnot. The next windmill that generates those clients is social media, right? That is that clients are looking on social media. They want to see lawyers and law firms having a presence on Instagram, on Facebook, posting to LinkedIn, posting to TikTok, having posts on X, podcasts, YouTube videos, and whatnot. Of course, you have to have a strong website with content that's going to be attractive to clients to keep their attention on your website. And very importantly, and startup law firms recognize the value of this, is to accumulate and publish tens, if not hundreds, even thousands of 5-star Google reviews. That is today's social proof. So when clients are going on to law firms, they don't need to ask, who do you know? Similar when we go on Amazon, or if we're going to book a hotel or make a reservation at a restaurant, we want to be looking at what others are saying about the lawyers and law firm that they're considering to hire. Five-star Google reviews are gold. And then there's old school. There still is networking. There still is passing out business cards. And then finally, in terms of generating business for startup law firms, and this is good news for senior attorney led firms, is mergers and acquisitions. Startup law firms recognize the value of growth by acquisition and the three resources that growth by acquisition presents to startup law firms, which is instant client growth by acquiring the book of business of a senior attorney led firm, welcoming in the workforce of senior attorney led firms, that is, key lawyers and support staff, and subject matter knowledge that the lawyers at selling law firms have developed to convert that subject matter knowledge to digital content to feed that proverbial black bear word beast in terms of what it is that startup law firms need to attract the attention of clients. So how do we even get here in terms of the startup law firm that we are seeing today in the marketplace? We hear a lot about consolidation of law firms, but we want to introduce here, and it's not necessarily novel, is really the consolidation of consumers. That is the consolidation of clients' attention. And here we'll give kudos to Gary Vaynerchuk, who always speaks about the value of attention, right? We want the attention of consumers, the attention of clients. Post 2020, the attention of clients seeking out lawyers and law firms is digital. Clients look today on Google, AI, multiple channels of social media. That is what is getting the attention of clients who are retaining law firms. That consolidation of the clients, right, is similar. If we want to make an analogy or analogies, okay, if we think about Amazon and Netflix and Uber, right, what's the consolidation of attention there? Also, digital. It is much more convenient to go onto our smartphones or onto our laptops or iPads to order anything and everything from Amazon as compared to going to Sears. It is so much more convenient to sit on our couches and find a movie or a series or a documentary that we want to watch as compared to driving down to a local blockbuster store. Well, it is similarly much easier to look online today for lawyers and law firms to hire those lawyers and law firms. Hence, that's the basis for why it is that we see the startup law firms today. Now, to look at that a little bit differently in terms of a timeline, where we are. We are in the mid 2020s now. We are heading towards the 2030s. And what we're seeing in the marketplace in terms of consumer attention is the digital adoption by would-be clients who go through the process of looking on Google, looking on AI for lawyers and law firms to consider, visiting their websites to confirm that, yes, these lawyers and law firms, they have the experience to assist me with my legal needs, and then also looking for that social proof and multiple channels of social media in terms of confirming that, yes, this is a lawyer or law firm that I would consider hiring. And I didn't even mention there any type of word of mouth confirmation in the mid 2020s when the consumers, the would be clients, have adopted digital to search for lawyers and law firms. That is how the startup law firms of today and tomorrow know how to attract that attention of clients so that they will be retained. And now let's look at this from the perspective of sales of law firms for senior attorney led firms. The most important, the most valuable asset that senior attorneys have when they're selling their law practices is their books of business. If your book of business, that is a senior attorney led firm's book of business, is not generating as many new clients as it did pre Google, before this digital era, what we call the 3.0 digital era for the legal industry, then their law firm will become worth less. That doesn't mean it's worthless, but is going to become worth less. And I'll just give a quick example of a client of ours that has a great practice, a niche practice that services to a particular culture. That practice has become very hard to sell because would-be purchasers are communicating to us that that book of business is not as valuable because they can generate the clients in that culture, in that community for less money than it would be to pay for the value of that book of business. Now, let's contrast the sales of senior attorney-led firms to the sales of startup law firms. Startup law firms will be selling their law firms under what we call Law Firm Sales 2.0. And Law Firm Sales 2.0, there will be value paid for the digital value and the brand equity that will be paid as upfront money based upon data analytics that show that the clients, that is that energy source for law firms, is traceable, trackable, is not dependent upon rainmaker attorneys. And as a result, there will be a fixed price at closings on the sales of startup law firms, plus earnouts based upon the book of business. We're already just to look more into the future. We're already seeing what we'll call law firm sales 2.5 or even law firm sales 3.0, where there will no longer need to be an earnout based upon the book of business. And instead, the sale will be based upon digital value, brand equity, the goodwill of the law firms, not dependent upon rainmaker attorneys. And as a result, the sale values there will be significantly higher than what we see today in law firm sales 1.0 when it is based upon an earnout value of only a book of business. So, in summary, the age of the startup law firm has arrived. That the characteristics of startup law firms consists of developing a practice area or practice areas, developing a strategy for how to market that product to the marketplace to originate clients, build a team around that product that the law firm is offering via its practice areas, increase sales, have an eye on profitability, and then achieve an exit sale for a startup law firm. Startup law firms will enjoy Law Firm Sales 2.0, which will involve real payments at closings, multiples of EBITDA, multiples of gross revenues. Also, just as examples of how those payments will be made, plus an additional payment based upon brand value as well. We will see earnouts in Law Firm Sales 2.0 based upon a book of business, and eventually Law Firm Sales 2.0 will be replaced by 2.5 or even 3.0. Well, the earnout will not be necessary because the sales will be based primarily on digital value and brand equity of selling law firms. For senior attorney-led firms, as startup law firms are developing the value of their businesses and they have a strategy, they have practice areas that they want to promote, and they need clients. Senior attorney-led firms provide the three resources to boost the growth of today's startup law firms. You have clients, you have a book of business, check that box. Startup law firms want and need that. You have key employee lawyers and support staff. Startup law firms, growing law firms need those resources as well. And senior attorney led firms have subject matter knowledge that's really treasure chests filled with digital content that startup law firms can convert that subject matter knowledge to digital content to attract the attention of clients to retain those firms. But it's very important for senior attorneys to recognize that the value of their books of business, if that value goes down, then the value of their practices is going to go down and may not be worthwhile for startup law firms to purchase today's senior attorney-led firms if the value is surpassed by the ease of being able to generate new clients digitally in today's 3.0 digital era for the legal industry. And that is the state of the market for law firm sales. And we recognize more than 11 minutes. And now we're excited to introduce our bonus segment for today.
So for today's bonus segment, I'm very excited to introduce Nicole Bergen. Nicole leads Elevate Marketing Research. Nicole focuses on marketing and developing brand value for personal injury law firms. Very excited to introduce Nicole today. We're going to be discussing brand value for personal injury law firms. Personal injury law firms more and more are catching on to the importance of developing brand value to attract clients. And we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to discuss the importance of brand when it comes to selling a personal injury law firm. Nicole, welcome. Love to hear more about you and Elevate, please.
Thank you for having me. So excited to be here. In a nutshell, I help law firms understand the consumer. We conduct over 10,000 interviews a year in different markets regionally, and we help law firms understand and measure their trust, their preference, how well their brand is resonating with the people that they serve or want to do business with. So I am just the voice of the consumer. I connect the dots for law firms, helping them understand that so that they can refine their marketing messages to land in front of the consumer in a way where it resonates. And I help measure it through
Amazing.
consumer research. Yeah, it's really fun.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to have two questions today.
Okay.
So our first question is, what do you recommend for personal injury law firms seeking to develop and measure their firm's brand value, including how to score high on Elevate's brand report card?
Great question. It's a bit of a loaded one. I think we kind of need to separate it into two, if that's okay.
Yeah,
So the
let's do it.
first part of your question is, how do you develop brand? And that's a complicated question, right? There's a lot of paths or avenues to get there. But the first thing I would say, Jeremy, is ask yourself as you're developing your personal brand for your law firm, what's in it for me, the consumer? So whether it is that you're crafting a billboard campaign, a meta campaign, you're writing TV copy or radio scripts, you really want to come back down to what makes us unique and what's in it for me, the consumer, in doing business with you. If you can't answer that question, you're not developing a brand. A brand is the answer to that question. Does that make sense?
That makes total
Okay.
sense. Makes total sense. So you've developed at Elevate an actual report card
Yes.
for scoring for personal injury law firms.
Yes.
How do we measure where you are at any given time with developing your brand? How can you make it stronger? So can you tell us about that report card? I mean, everybody wants to get an A, right? But it's hard. It's hard to earn it. I think you're our teacher.
Here you go.
Yeah. All right,
Well,
so
just remember, don't shoot the messenger. I'm here to tell you what 500 people in your area have to say about your firm. Let's go ahead and pull up this report card and let me walk you through it and explain. And listen, I get this is not for the faint-hearted. It might be a little scary when you get this report card. So please note, this was a study that was done for a law firm, and you can see they have some competitors here, right? So how am I doing? Well, it depends. How are you doing versus everybody else? So first thing we need to understand is, what is your awareness? There are other questions that are asked before this report card, Jeremy, and we get here. We've arrived to this report card. So let's say Searcy Denny Law, right? They're in the dark blue. And here we have Morgan and Morgan, right? How does Searcy Denny do on the concept of having a track record of winning for their clients? Okay. The market, the personal injury space, meaning the people we interviewed in this study, which were non-rejectors of hiring a law firm, right? They have to have auto insurance and, certain ethnicities and incomes. We'll kind of move past that. Just trust me that it was a legitimate sampling of people. And they're saying, well, you're not winning on that. Okay. Someone else is, or even better yet, look at the I don't know, Jeremy. In some of these key things, a lot of consumers don't know who's doing a good job of this out of all the law firms asked about. So that's actually an opportunity. So what we like to do at Elevate is say, okay, what are the things that consumers in your area value? The items on the left here in the rows. That's step one. Then step two is, how are you doing on those items, right? Which you see here. And how are you doing versus your competition? So this measures all of that brand work that you're doing, Jeremy, and tells you, is it landing, right? Is my brand momentum moving in the right direction? And if you're preparing for investors, this is a critical piece to show them why they should be making that investment, right? Because I'm winning in these things that really matter to people. Or, hey, look at all this percent I don't know. This screams opportunity for future growth for my firm. I imagine you have a question, but
No,
I don't know if I explained that okay.
No, you explained it great. I mean, I think that brand is really developing among law firms generally, and certainly among personal injury law firms, right? We talk. So many people talk. Who doesn't talk about billboards, right? You drive down any highway, we're going to see billboards. How does that actually translate into developing brand, let alone multi-channel digital marketing, right? Law firms are spending upwards 20% of their gross revenues on marketing. And how does that translate into brand? And I think you said it so well, and I've heard you speak before, Nicole, about what's in it for the consumer. Okay. So if you could just share maybe a couple tips out of that report card of, from what you've learned so far, what's in it for the consumer that's going to let PI firms really start developing brand value in their communities?
One thing I will say is we all need to stop using the term advertising and think about it as me-vertising,
Mm.
right? What's in it for me, the consumer? It's not about just spending money and getting your name out there. It's leaving an impression on the consumer. And there's a lot of personal injury firms, right? How do you differentiate yourself? So pick a USP, a unique selling proposition. Let's say you're going out in your billboards and you want to be known as reputable and trusted, right? You're really wanting to lean into that honesty. So you launch a campaign about honesty and you've got 10 billboards up and down the freeway. We will see, Jeremy, when we do these brand report cards, what's going on here with this honesty reputation thing? You seem to have moved the needle quite a bit here. And we'll uncover that they just recently launched a billboard campaign that was specifically about that one thing. And you'll see it pop up in the report card. But it takes time to leave that impression, right, with consumers. And so one of the pieces of advice that I often will give is don't try to chase too many things at the same time. Pick two.
Hmm.
Pick two things that you really want to be known for, that you think you can win on, and that maybe is a point of differentiating. You're really good at this, better than Morgan and Morgan. Okay. And then lean into it hard on Meta, on your billboards, don't get distracted by the noise and trying to put 50 million things and NASCARing it out, because then you're just going to fall into a sea of sameness.
Great. And before we move on to our next question, could you just put a definition a little bit more on mevertising? Can you tell us, please?
So it's what's in it for me, the consumer.
Good.
Right. So instead of thinking about going out there and talking about you and all, what's all about the firm, what's in it for them? How can you demonstrate empathy to the consumer? I mean, think about personal injury, Jeremy. It's a very emotionally charged event in someone's life. They may need to hire a personal injury firm once, hopefully, in their lifetime, right? If at all. So you got to approach that with some sensitivity and thinking about what's in it for them.
Terrific.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. All right. So let's go into our second question.
Okay.
So our second question is, what are your thoughts about how a personal injury law firm's brand value can enhance overall value when planning for a sale as part of an exit strategy?
Well, think about to quantify to someone interested in investing in your firm, to show them, right? Like we just saw on the brand report card, how you're moving the needle, what kind of momentum you have, that investment you've made in mevertising, right? What impact has it had on the area that you serve? If I'm an investor, Jeremy, and I see this law firm I'm thinking about investing in has a 30% I don't know in the market, but they have momentum on honest and credible, I want to invest in that firm, right? Because there's upside for me to help that firm grow with additional investment in the mevertising, right?
Very good. I completely agree. And just to add on to that, what we continue to see in the marketplace as sales of personal injury law firms has really started to take off in the mid 2020s. The word that we hear so often is EBITDA, right? Is a multiple of EBITDA. I think what Nicole, or I should say, I know what Nicole was talking about is a whole nother line item when we're selling a law firm, which is the goodwill brand value of the firm. And when firms can have and present data analytics that shows is that mevertising is translating into sales because of brand value, that's going to add additional zeros. Could be a lot of zeros, by the way, when you are taking on, as Nicole is saying, an investor, or when you are selling your personal injury law firm. So Nicole, thank you so much. How can people reach you, Nicole? And can you tell us a little bit more about Elevate before we say so long?
Yeah, absolutely. I love publishing our data. We're constantly publishing free studies. We just did the largest personal injury study. I know you saw me at a conference recently, over 1,200 Americans. If you want a copy of that presentation, hit me up in my DMs and LinkedIn. Our company, Elevate Marketing Research, posts these insights all the time on our LinkedIn page, white papers, things that we're seeing in the field, and just all that free research is available to the industry. It's our gift to all of you to help you guys succeed. So feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn or our company page, Elevate Marketing Research. But if you want to shoot me an email, of course, you can do that to Nicole@growwithelevate.com. I'm happy to accept carrier pigeons as well.
Wonderful. Nicole, thank you so much. And by the way, I do encourage people to please join and reach out and connect with Nicole on LinkedIn. Nicole.
Yeah, if you want to get your own personal brand report card, let's get to work.
Absolutely. So Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.